So the Ari says, "V'kasher ala b'rtzono hapashut." And as Rav Ashlag explains it, it doesn't mean when the Creator desired, but rather when the vessel, the desire to receive, within the endless world desired to become elevated, to become purified. And in order for that to happen, it necessitated livro ha'olamot u'le'atzil ha'ne'etzalim, that worlds be created and that emanations become emanated, le'otzil la'or shlemut pe'ulotav u'shmotav v'chinuyav, to bring into being the completion of the work, of the actions, and the Creator's names, and His other names, His code names. Asher zot haya sibat briat ha'olamot, because that was the reason for creation. So as Rav Ashlag will explain, there's really a balance here, and between the Creator's, we'll call it need, although we know the Creator doesn't have needs, or the Creator's desire, which is a desire to share, and the vessel's desire to receive, and that created a conflict for the vessel, not for the Creator. The vessel had a need to grow, had a need to change things. So the entire purpose of creation really was to pacify, to assist the vessel, which is humanity, which is us, in living out or becoming what we wanted the framework to be. On the other side to that, there is this concept that the creation of the world, or at least what occurred in Ein Sof, was for the purpose of bringing out the names of the Creator. What does that mean? So we know that, and this is something that's discussed in different places in Rav Ashlag, that there's the idea that the Creator is called Rachum, Mechanun, merciful, that every aspect of what are the Creator's names are simply manifestations of the Creator's positive light, Creator's positive light in our world. And everything that we feel in our world that is of a positive nature is a manifestation of the light of the Creator. So although the first frame of the Ari's words here are talking about the vessel's needs, the Creator's light manifested, and the creation was also for the purpose, because as Rav Ashlag explains, although the Creator was fine with the way things were in the endless world, still the vessel's desire to manifest differently necessitated the creation of our worlds, but then also it also brought about the Creator's essence being realized in our world, meaning the Creator's essence of being merciful, the Creator's essence of being sharing, the Creator's essence of being all the things that are good became manifest in our world. So when the Ari says to bring out, or to bring to light the completion of His actions and His names and His kinuim, or the other terms that are used to talk about the Creator, because we know that the simple phrase that the Kabbalists use, the Ramchal certainly uses it a lot, and of course Rav Ashlag uses it a lot, that the entire purpose of creation was lehitiv nivra'av, was to give to the creations. That is what what the Ari is referring to here. So when he's talking about revealing the Creator's names, it means the Creator's essence, Rachum, Chanun, merciful, sharing all of those things, and that's what he means by leotzi la'or shlemut pe'ulotav u'shmotav v'chinuyav. Because the concept of leitiv v'nivra'av, how does that become manifest? How does the Creator give us good? He gives us good in all different ways. And the different names of the Creator, the different shemot and the different kinuim, are just different manifestations, different ways that the light of the Creator manifests in this world. And this concept that the Creator manifests depending on the vessel is a really important fundamental concept that Rav Ashlag explains in a deep way in the introduction to the Zohar. And this is a section that has many different ramifications, because what's different certainly about Kabbalah, and specifically the way Rav Ashlag explains it, is that there is no absolute God in our world. There is how we interact with God, how we interact with the light of the Creator in our world. And the way we see God, the way we think about God, the way we feel God, the way we feel the light of the Creator in our world, that's the way the Creator manifests. And it's really a very important and basic understanding. And we'll read here from Rav Ashlag's words in the Akdamat Sefer HaZohar. V'das shezeh kol ha'ifresh שבעולם הזה שלפני התיקון אל גמר התיקון. Rav Ashlag says, the difference between our world before the final correction and the way the world will be in the final correction. כי מטרם גמר התיקון, because before the end of the correction, before humanity has transformed our desire to receive into desire to share, נקראת המלכות בשם אילן הטוב ורע. The malchut, or the way we receive our light, is referred to as the tree of knowledge, good and evil, good and bad. שפירושו כי המלכות הוא סוד הנהגתו יתברך שבעולם הזה. What is the malchut? The malchut represents how the light of the Creator manifests in our world. וכל עוד שהמקבלים לא באו לידי השלמה, שיוכלו לקבל שלמות הטבתו, until we, the vessels, have not achieved our perfection, have not completely transformed our desire to receive into a desire to share, and therefore we are unable to receive His complete, the light, the Creator's complete abundance, שחשב עלינו במחשבת הבריאה, which was the Creator's desire and thought at the thought of creation, מוכרחה ההנהגה להיות בדרך טוב ורע, בשכר ועונש. Until we perfect ourselves, the Creator cannot manifest in our world in a different way other than in manifesting in ways that seem to be good and ways that seem to be bad. כי כלי הקבלה שלנו, because our vessels, מלוכלכים עוד בקבלה העצמית המצומצמת מאוד במידתה. Our vessels are filthy because we are still working with a desire to receive for the self alone, and that limits the amount of light that we can receive from the Creator. וגם מפרידה אותנו מהבורא יתברך, and it also separates us from the Creator. והטבה שלמה, and the complete goodness, בשיעור הגדול שחשב עלינו, איננה the ultimate abundance of light that the Creator thought to give us, איננה אלא בבחינת השפעה, is the only way it is received is through, the Creator shares it, שהיא תענוג בלי שום גבול וצמצום. The only way to achieve that level of abundance, of manifestation of the light of the Creator, is through the process of transformation or process of sharing. מה שאין כן הקבלה לעצמו, what is not true of the desire to receive for the self alone, הוא מוגבל ומצומצם מאוד, is extremely limited and constraining. כי השביעה מחבה תכף התענוג, because the second we get something that we desire, it already diminishes the amount of joy that we have from it, and therefore the desire to receive is a very limited vessel. וזה סוד הכתוב כל פעל השם למענהו. And this is the secret of the verse. It says in Mishlei that everything that was created for the Creator, that the entire creation, as Dari says, what was the purpose of creation? That the creation of the world was to manifest the Creator's names and ways to which He is referred to. What does that mean? Everything that happens in our world, the entire purpose of creation was so that we can become a vessel that gives, ultimately giving to the Creator, what's called nachat ruach, or giving Him the ability to share with us. That is the purpose of creation. לפיכך נמצאים בני אדם משמשים בעסקי העולם בהפך גמור ממה שנבראו מתחילתם. So what happens, unfortunately, for the most part, and even in so much of our lives, is that we use this world in the exact opposite from the purpose for which it was created. שהקדוש ברוך הוא אומר כל העולם בשבילי נברא, because the Creator says the entire purpose of creation was to become a being of sharing, ultimately being a being of sharing that shares with the Creator by allowing Him to share with us. וכן כל הנקרא בשמי לכבודי בראתיו, as it says in Isaiah, in Isaiah, everything that was created was for the Creator, meaning so that the Creator can share to us, and the only way He can share to us is when we have completely transformed into a being of sharing. But we unfortunately say and feel and think and live the opposite of that. That the entire world was created to fulfill our desire to receive for the self alone. We want to swallow up all the goodness in the world for ourselves alone. So therefore, obviously, it makes sense that we are not ready yet to receive the Creator's complete abundance. Now, here's the point. And that's why we experience the Creator's light in the world in terms of good and bad. Sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's bad. Shesachar va'onesh mesuva v'tov v'ra, because being punished and receiving reward is dependent on a view of good and bad. Because we use the vessels, the desire to receive, but the vessel, in the opposite way for which it was created in our world. Therefore, obviously, our experience of this world will have to manifest in ways that are not positive. Because if we're using the vessel, the kli, that we are given in this world in the way that is opposite for the purpose for which it was created, we will have to experience our world, and therefore the light of the Creator in some ways that are dark, that are bad. And this is where Rav Ashlag reveals the law, the chok. Ki chok hu zeh shelo yuchal hanivra lekabel ra mi'ito yitbarach begalui. It is impossible for us to receive bad from the Creator in a way that is revealed, in the way that is clear. So there can never be a situation where I'm feeling bad and I know that that's coming from the Creator. It's impossible for us to have clarity about the Creator while at the same time feeling a negative experience in our world. So it's a spiritual law that we cannot experience the Creator at the same time that we're having a bad experience. It's impossible. If we're feeling bad, we cannot be experiencing the Creator. And therefore, when a person feels bad, great sadness or small sadness, it's necessary, and this is the law, that to the degree that we feel bad, that we feel down, that we feel sad, that we diminish our certainty in the light of the Creator. Because you cannot have 100% certainty in the light of the Creator and having 100% feeling of bad. So if a person feels bad 20%, that means he has diminished his certainty in the light of the Creator by 20%. And the Creator is hidden from him. And this is the worst punishment in the world. The worst punishment in the world is when our certainty, our connection, our perception of the Creator becomes diminished. And what's the rule that precipitates that? To whatever degree, and it's an exact balance, as Rav Ashlag says, to the degree that we feel sad, to the degree that we feel bad, to the degree that we experience negativity, to that exact degree, the Creator is diminished in our mind, in our consciousness, in our life. Because it is impossible, to whatever degree we feel sadness, to have that degree of the light of the Creator in our life. There cannot be a revelation of the Creator and sadness. To the degree that we have sadness, pain, darkness in our life, that we feel it like that. It doesn't make it. There's a very big difference between having things in life that are not easy and going through difficulties, but still having joy, but feeling sadness and feeling down. That feeling, there's a famous story from Rav Zusha that we know that Rav Zusha had a very difficult life, and a student once came to the Maggid Mezrich, who was a teacher of Rav Zusha, and he said to him, I'd like, this concept of blessing on difficulties, on things that seem to be bad, as joyfully as we bless, and we're happy about things that happen in a good way. So he says, go to my student Zusha, and he'll teach you. So the student comes to Rav Zusha and he says to him, I went to our teacher, the Maggid, and I asked him to teach me how a person can bless and be happy for things that are not positive in the same way that he's happy for things that are positive. And he said, I should come to you. And Zusha looks at him and he says, I don't understand. He says, he should have sent you to somebody who's once had a bad experience in their lives. I've never had anything bad in my life. How can I possibly teach you how to experience a bad thing just like you experience a positive thing? What's the point? He got to the level where there was no bad. And because he got to the point where there was no bad experience, he was always completely connected to the light of the Creator. Because what Rav Ashlag is saying here very clearly, to the degree that we feel a negative experience, again, not difficulty. Difficulty happens all the time, and that's part, it's part of our growth. But to the degree that we experience down, sadness, To that degree, we have to become disconnected from the light of the Creator. That is the rule of the spiritual world. You cannot experience darkness while having a complete experience of the light of the Creator. And as Rav Ashlag says, "Shu ha'onesh hayoter gadol sheba'olam," which is the worst punishment to the world, to diminish our conception, our connection, our certainty in the light of the Creator. Harei she'hargashat tov ve'ra b'hashgachato. So therefore, when we experience good and bad from the Creator, this is what necessitates there being our perception of the world as being a world within which there is punishment and there is reward. Because what happens then is when we're experiencing something bad and we feel like we have to force ourselves to still be happy, that process, what are we saying? You're saying there's bad in this world and I'm pushing myself to still be connected, and then I'll receive more of the light of the Creator. And if a person doesn't work hard to keep his connection, then he's punished because he's diminished his connection to the Creator, his certainty in the Creator. And therefore, even though the Creator is the source behind everything, nevertheless, a person who's experiencing our world in good and bad, the essence of the Creator behind everything has to become hidden. Because when a person is experiencing bad, the negative side has the ability to diminish our connection to the light of the Creator. And that brings the worst punishment, which is separation from the Creator. Then a person begins to doubt the light of the Creator. And then he goes on to explain how that can be transformed. But the idea here is that the Creator is only revealed, and this is, revealed based on our perception. If we, like Reb Zusha, have a perception of only good in our world, then we don't live in the world of Tovera. And therefore we can maintain a continuous and constant connection to the light of the Creator. If we experience bad, and it's only dependent on us. Again, what happens in life is not necessarily dependent on us, but how we experience it is dependent on us. And if we experience it as a bad thing, as a negative thing, that precipitates and necessitates a disconnection from the light of the Creator to whatever degree we're experiencing that bad, and then we are not revealing shlemut pe'ulotav u'shmotav v'chinuyav, the complete revelation of the names of the Creator, Rachum, Chanun, sharing, and merciful. This concept, and it's a very important concept that is revealed throughout the writings of Rav Ashlag, that there is no absolute perception of the Creator. The Creator is revealed depending on how we experience our lives in this world, and we have the ability to either live within the realm of Etz Hadat Tov Ra, good and bad, where the Creator's names are not completely revealed, or we can begin living at least in Shlemut Pe'ulotav U'Shmotav V'Chinuyav, in the perfection of the Creator's name, in the perfection of the Creator's revelation of Rachum V'Chanun, as merciful and constantly sharing His abundance with us. It's a very, very important concept that has many different manifestations. And again, this is what the Ari is talking about here. Now, Rav Ashlag says, Ein litmoa, one should not wonder, Ech nifchan ratzon bein sof hagavoa mikol rayon. How can there be a desire in the endless world that is beyond our thoughts? Ad kedei lomar ala birtzono hapashut, so much so to say that it became awakened in the desire, in the simple desire. You can understand this with what we spoke about earlier, Rav Ashlag explained earlier, that as we explained, and hopefully it's all clear to us, that the second the Creator desired to share, there was a vessel which necessitated a desire to receive. So obviously there was both a desire to share, which was the desire of the Creator, and the desire to receive, which was the vessel, which is us. But in the endless world, hu ratzon pashut, it was a simple desire. Besod hu shmo echad, in the secret of hu shmo echad, He and His name are one. As Rav Ashlag explained, He refers to the Creator, Shmo refers to the vessel, the desire, and there was oneness. כמו שכתוב בפרקי דרבי אליעזר פרק א', as it says in the פרקי דרבי אליעזר, וכן בדברי הרב לקמן, and also as the Ari will talk about it, that in the endless world, although there are two opposite essences, a desire to share and a desire to receive, still there was the secret of Hu Shmo Echad, that the creator and the vessel, the desire to share and desire to receive, were absolutely one and unified. Ki ha'or shebein sof mechoneh hu, the light in the endless world is referred to as he or who. V'haratzon lekabel shebein sof mechoneh shmo, the desire to receive in the endless world is referred to as his name. V'hem shnehem besod ha'achdut ha'pshuta she'ein pirud kol shehem benehem, and they were in complete union, in simple union, that there was no separation. אמנם על לדמות הפירוד והאחדות האמורים כאן, על הפירוד והאחדות שבמושגים הגשמיים. And again, of course, here, and this again is, we can go through it relatively quickly because this is a concept that many of us have probably heard many times, being in the center, that when we're talking about separation, union and separation, we're not talking about physically being close or being far, but of course we're talking in the spiritual sense, because none of these concepts are physical. But so Rav Ashlag makes it very clear, we're not talking about physical objects that hanifradim al derech hatnuah, that become separate through movement, berichuk makom and v'kiruv makom, that are brought together by space or separated by space. Because the spiritual essence does not take up space, because it is beyond the conception of space. You should know that separation in the spiritual beings does not occur only through difference of form. באופן שאם דבר רוחני אחד קונה לו צורה נוספת, המשונה מאותה צורה שיש לו. That if there's one spiritual body, and then it attains a different essence. הנה יצא לו הדבר הרוחני ההוא מבחינת אחד, לשתי בחינות נבדלות. Then obviously and necessary that it becomes two separate spiritual beings. Because oneness, as Rav Ashlag makes very clear, has to do with being alike. Complete oneness is being completely alike. Complete separation is being completely not alike. Because when two things are opposite, they become separate spiritually. וכמו שהמהויות הגשמיות מתרחקות ומתחברות זו בזו בדרך ריחוק מקום וקירוב מקום, just like physical essences become separate or become together by space that comes between them, or they come together when there's less space between them, כן המהויות הרוחניות מובדלות ומתחברות על פי השתנות הצורה והשתוות הצורה. So too spiritual essences become separate or unified depending on difference or similarity of form. ששינוי הצורה מבדילן זו מזו, that when they are different forms, different essences, they are separate. והשתוות הצורה מדביקתן זו בזו, and we are their same essence, they become unified. And of course this word dvekut, which is the essence of Rav Ashlag's teachings. וזכור זאת כי זהו המפתח הראשון לחוכמה. And remember this, Rav Ashlag says, because this is the first key into the wisdom. So this is again a concept that I hope and assume most of us have heard many, many times. Shivui tzura, similarity of form, which is the basis of the purpose of the creation of our world, that we are meant to achieve similarity of form with the Creator, become a desire to share just like the Creator, and through that process become completely unified with the Creator. Rav Ashlag, in the introduction to the Zohar, speaks to this point. He says, "Shinui hatzora mavdil baruchani lechalkeu l'shnayim." Different forms separates spiritual beings into two. L'mashal shebet anashim ohavim ze et ze, when two people love each other. Tomar shehem dvekim ze beze keguf echad. You can say that they are unified, like in one body. Ulehefech shehem sonim ze et ze. The opposite can be said when they hate each other. Tomar shehem rechokim ish mereu kirchok mizrach mimarav. You can say that they are separate, like the east from the west. They are completely separate. This of course is not referring to physical space between them. This is depending on similarity of form. Because when they are the same, She'ohev kol ma shechavero ohev. And this is the point. When a person loves everything somebody else loves, v'soneh kol ma shechavero soneh, and he hates everything that his friend hates, nimtzaim ohavim ze et ze udvukim ze beze. Then they are, you can say that they are unified. And this concept, this is something, again, hopefully most of us have heard very, very often. But the clarity of this, and this is a question we have to ask ourselves, because it's not just about how we act, it's about how we think. It's about what we like and what we don't like. We should start thinking about, what does the Creator like? Well, we know simply. He likes to think about others. He likes to share to others, which is an action. What doesn't he like? He doesn't like a desire to receive. He doesn't like taking for himself. If we understand that, and this is, especially in thought, because I think many of us know you have to give, you have to do the actions of sharing. But to take it a step further and to really, really judge ourselves. How many of my thoughts are like the Creator's thoughts? Meaning, how much of my thoughts are based upon thinking about another person? And it's really a simple, equation. The more I think about sharing with others, even if I don't do an action, this is simply in the realm of thought. The more I'm thinking about other people, the more my thoughts are connected to the Creator's thoughts. The more I am dvekut, unified in the Creator in my mind. The more I talk about other people, in a positive way, of course, in a way of sharing to them, the more my mouth is davuk, is unified with the Creator. And this is true throughout our lives, and this is a question we have to ask ourselves. I think many of us, hopefully, are asking us in action, how much our actions are like the Creator, meaning how much of our actions are of sharing, and how much of them are of desire to receive for the self alone. But more importantly, and this is such a simple and straightforward question, how much of my day is thought around other people? And the simple beauty of it is that every time I have a thought about another person, I have just added one more element of the dvekut of my mind to the Creator. And every time I'm thinking about myself, I brought upon one more element of disassociation from the light of the Creator. This is such a simple, straightforward thought that really should permeate everything that we do. Rav Ashlag says, "Soneh kol ma shechavero soneh," hates everything that his friend hates. What is the one thing we know the Creator does not like? He does not like the desire to receive for the self alone. How much of the desire to receive for the self alone do we dislike? Not just that we're working on it to diminish it, but actually awaken a dislike for it. These thoughts, these feelings, these emotions also make us unified, dvekut, or not in dvekut with the light of the Creator. And this is a question that we have to constantly be asking ourselves. And this is the reality of which, whether we are more unified, we have achieved more dvekut with the light of the Creator, or less dvekut. Our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, both in what we like, what we dislike, what we're thinking about, and what we're not thinking about. And then Rav Ashlag says, so we know that there in spiritual reality, in the spiritual reality, there is unification, dvekut, that is achieved through ishtavut tzura, similarity of form, and there is lack of unification, there is separation that is caused by shinui tzura, separation of form. Ve'ata tavin, and Rav Ashlag says, now you can understand it's sod hu u'shmo echad, the secret of He and His name are one. Hanizkar le'el. And the simple union that we make it so clear that existed in the endless world. Because this union is one of the amazing miracles that the Creator can do. Because we explained before, the difference between the Creator, the emanator and the emanation, the Creator and the creation. That the desire to receive, we said, is what makes a vessel and what makes a separation from the Creator. Because that difference of form causes that the emanation, the vessel that was created, becomes separated from the Creator. And therefore it is called a vessel or an emanation and not the Creator, not the emanator. And based on that explanation, then one would think that the light of the Creator, which is referred to as He, the Creator, is not completely connected to the vessel that now has a desire to receive. The vessel that has the desire to receive the light of the Creator, which is referred to as He. Because what we know about the light of the Creator, His singular desire is to share, is to give. He does not have a desire to receive at all. Which is not true about the vessel, which is called the name, which has the desire to receive, which is called the desire to receive. And we know that in spiritual essences, separation, difference of form, causes separation. And this is what the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer says, and the Ari explains, that it is not true, there is no separation. But rather in the endless world, the emanator, the creator, the desire to share is completely unified with the desire to receive. There is no difference between them. Even though there's between the creator, the emanator, the sharer, and the vessel, obviously there has to be a different form between the sharer and the receiver. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't become manifest. It's not seen at all. And even though Rav Ashlag says we don't understand this, how this can be, nevertheless it is certainly so. And for this reason, because we can't comprehend, if we know the first rule, which is that difference of form separates, and we know the second reality that in the endless world there was a sharer and there was a receiver, we can't comprehend how those two things can come together, and we can still say in the endless world was Hu Shmo Echad, that there was the emanator and the vessel were unified as one. Nevertheless, Liot Inyan ze lemala misichlenu, this is beyond our conception, beyond our mind. So, what Rav Ashlag says is that on the one hand, we have to be clear that in the endless world there were these two essences, a desire to share and a desire to receive. Nevertheless, there is this miracle in the endless world. In the endless world, there is no separation caused by this. Why? We can't understand why. Logic would dictate that there would be a separation. Whenever I read this, I'm reminded, one of the famous things about the Ohev Yisrael, the Apter Rebbe, is that he would never see something bad, no matter what somebody did, and logically or any normal person would see it obviously as a negative action. He just could not see it as bad. He was connected to this Hu Shmo Echad. There's a famous teaching of the Baal Shem Tov that a person can only be judged if he judged somebody else. But to get to that point, there's levels of that. Many of us, try to work on it. We see somebody do something negative, but we say, you know what? I can't judge him. Meaning, I see, obviously, what he's doing is bad, but I'm not going to judge him. So that's in the realm of what Rav Ashlag is saying here. We can't comprehend it. But there are tzaddikim, there are righteous souls who get to the point where they are completely connected to the concept of the Ein Sof, that for them there is no separation, meaning even the most negative of actions cannot be seen as negative. If you read in the Ohev Yisrael Apter Rebbe, he's always explaining how things, whether it's Noach or whether every action that was done, that even in the Torah it seems to be negative, he can't see it. We see things that are negative and try not to judge. He just doesn't see anything negative because he was connected to this conception of the Hu Shmo Echad of the endless world. And what's important to know is that every time we see, again, this is a higher level, every time we see something negative in somebody else, we are connecting to the separation. And every time we come to the point where we can't see negative in somebody else, we are connecting to the secret of Hu Shmo Echad. And again, this is, it says when Mashiach comes that, we'll be able to eat pig. There's all kinds of things that will happen because we come closer to the concept of Hu Shmo. There is no separation, even though things are obviously right and wrong. We know that one of the explanations of Nadav and Avihu, it's Pinchas, and we know that they were reincarnated. That was that they thought, why did they make all those mistakes? Because they wanted to reveal the world of Hu Shmo Echad, that there was no right and wrong, there wasn't anything that was wrong to do, because when we go back to that world of Hu Shmo Echad, the world of the endless world, there is no negative actions. And a lot of other mistakes that were made because of trying to come close to this concept. But one thing that is not a mistake that we can do is to diminish our perception of judgment, right? Now, it's not the level of simply seeing somebody doing something bad and saying, it's bad, but I'm not going to judge him. But it's to get to the point where we just literally can't see bad anymore. Literally can't see bad anymore. And that's one idea. Because what that does is it connects us to the secret, Sod Hu Shmo Echad. That even though things are opposite, obviously one is light and one is dark, there is no difference. There's one thing, and I'm actually pretty excited because I think in the past few times I've gone through this, I've got an answer. But there was a question that I've had literally from the time I started learning Temunas Sefirot. And I'd like you to sort of think through this question during the week, and if you have an answer, please email it to me. Rav Ashlag in Gimel explains, and also in the introduction to the Zohar, that there are three steps in reality. There is the endless world, there is the process of the 6,000 years that we are in now, and then there is the Gemara Tikkun, the final correction. And what Rav Ashlag explains is that the perfection in the endless is really a mirror of the Gemara Tikkun, of the end of the correction. Meaning the reason why there is perfection in the endless world is because it already has been achieved in the Gemara Tikkun, and because the endless world is above time and space and motion, that reality already existed in the endless world. So that the work that we do in the 6,000 years that will bring about the Gemara Tikkun, that Gemara Tikkun is the perfection that already exists in the endless world. I hope that's clear. And again, you can read it again in Gimel or in the introduction to the Zohar. In the introduction to the Zohar, Rav Ashlag explains it even clearer, and I won't read through it, but if you have, even if you have, I highly recommend to read it again and again. So anyway, it's in Chavav, he says, and it starts before, that the third reality, which is the Gemara Tikkun, that the first reality, which is the endless world, necessitates there being the Gemara Tikkun, because if there was, based on this logic, if the Gemara Tikkun was never achieved, there could not be perfection in the endless world. The perfection in the endless world, Rav Ashlag explains, is dependent on the fact that the Gemara Tikkun will occur. מחייב בהחלט המצב הג' שיצא בכל השיעור המלא שבמחשבת הבריאה של מצב א', לא יחסר ממנו אף משהו. Because the entire reality of the endless world, of the perfection there, was dependent on the fact that it will be achieved, and there could already be a reality in the endless world because there's no time, space, and motion. So if that's true, that the perfection in the endless world is only there because we will achieve it, meaning we, the vessels, will completely transform our desire to receive for the self alone into a desire to share. Through that, because we will achieve it in the Gemara Tikkun, therefore the Creator will be able to give us all of His light, and we'll be able to have complete dvikut because He'll share all of His light, and we'll receive it for the sake of sharing Him, giving Him the joy of sharing. And that reality is what makes the endless world's perfection possible, union possible. Then the answer to the question is simple. The question is, how can there be unity between the light and vessel in the endless world if there's difference of form? No, there's no difference of form. Because the light and vessel in the endless world is the perfection that was achieved at the Gemara Tikkun. And that light and vessel in the Gemara Tikkun has already gone through the transformation process. The vessel has already completed its transformation process of becoming a being of sharing. And in that situation, the light can share and the vessel can receive for the sake of sharing, and it's a complete, beautiful union. And it's not beyond our perception why there is Hu Shmo Echad in that reality, why the light and vessel can be in complete union, because they both have a desire to share. The vessel has a desire to share, and therefore it gives. The Creator says, give me, so that I know how much you enjoy giving me. Give me, and I'll receive, because I know how much you want to give me. That union is completely logical. So why does Rav Ashlag say that it's illogical? That the union in the Ein Sof is mipliot, is a miracle that the Creator created that we can't understand.